welcome to another The Batman 2 discussion series video. It has been, well, I didn't do one last week either, like the one before, so it's almost becoming a bi-weekly series at the minute. Apologies to anyone who's really enjoying it. If you're brand new here, what we do is discuss, have you guessed it, The Batman 2, and, you know, parts of the universe in general. It is a heavily engaged with the audience series, so every single question that I'm bouncing off is from you in the comment sections, replying to questions from the previous video, expanding and expanding and expanding upon what we can really dissect about what could be coming in the series, what we would like to see, and who knows, one day, as what we did with kind of the Batman, the first movie, look back on some of our ideas. Now, I've been getting a couple of comments saying, why are you still making these videos? Again, well, first and foremost, I just want to address this because it might be confusing to some people since the Batman is kind of done and dusted now, even though we're getting a second and third movie, is that you don't have to watch these videos, and I really do mean that candidly. They're just accessory bonus videos in between that of any news updates for the Batman community that we have on this channel. Number two, people clearly enjoy it. People want to see the discussion continue, further the ideas, keep that kind of spark of the fire of the hype that is the Batman alive until we get the sequel, or until we get the second, well, the first show, the Penguin series, and then the Arkham series. And three, honestly, I love it. I love talking about this with you guys. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making these videos. Like, it genuinely, it is a Q&A series. It is something that kind of revitalizes our passion for this world that Matt Reeves has birthed with his take on the Batman. And honestly, every single time I'm looking at these backlog of questions, sometimes I take fresh ones off the previous video, it always inspires me as well. Like, and my, how do I say this, kind of clear passion for the movies, because again, I love the ideas that we all come up with and bounce off one another. I mean, I understand if this is the only video I do on my channel, but I tend to upload daily, so one Batman discussion video in like a week or every 2 weeks really isn't a big deal. You either watch it or don't watch it. I just wanted to put that out there, but a big thank you to all of the supporters who do continue to engage with me on this. It does seem as though a lot of you enjoy it, but I just thought I'd put it out there for people who are wondering why he's still talking about this. So starting off with number one. Number one is from Eric Atkinson. Now, this is kind of a little bit of an extension off of the previous discussion series video, which I'll leave on the end card of this video, or maybe it's in the cards above. So Eric says that in the comics Long Halloween / Dark Victory, Batman was heartbroken with what happened to Harvey, and he said that he was very close to telling Harvey that he's Bruce Wayne. Harvey would have been the first person to know aside from Alfred. He considered him one of his only friends. Although I'm not a huge Two Face fan, that could be a powerful storyline to adapt if you cast and write correctly. I agree, like, wholeheartedly agree, and the reason why I wanted to include this is a little bit of an add-on from the last week's one. If you didn't watch last week's video, oh, no, it wasn't even last week's, the weeks before. That's what I mean, not even doing them every week at the minute. We were talking about Two-Face, and we're talking about, like, fan castings, who we could really see, how Two-Face could fit in, or more likely, Harvey Dent. We might not even get to Two-Face. What Eric is pointing out here, it could be a very, very, very powerful storyline if you do adapt and cast it and write it correctly, because that's why I hammered down on the friendship of Bruce and Harvey. I don't think you should even do Two-Face in the second film if you bring in Harvey Dent. I think if you ever want to do Two-Face, have a whole second film of expanding how they're trying to make Gotham better. Mayor Bella Real, Harvey Dent as the district attorney, the very much so now philanthropic Bruce Wayne, like that after his parents, and, you know, make it that much more tragic in the third movie if Harvey has a bit of a downfall, whether he's in the courtroom doing a trial and acid gets thrown on his face, whatever way Matt Reeves adapts it, it would be heartbreaking. And that reminds me, I should have put this in earlier, but I screenshotted another comment from William saying, I would love it if Harvey Dent gets introduced in the second movie and builds a relationship with Bruce, and then in the third movie, Harvey becomes Two-Face. It would be so much more impactful if we see the building relationship and see it fall apart in the following movie. I agree, just treat Harvey in the second movie as like Colin Farrell in the first movie. You know, again, he, like Colin Farrell said on the Ellen Show, and he have like, what, like 9, 11, 12 minutes of screen time? I can't remember the exact screen time, but let's just assume it's around that. But because it was sprinkled nicely in the movie, it felt like, even though Oz wasn't in it a lot, it felt like we did keep seeing him quite a lot, even though there wasn't, you know, as an overall package, a lot of him. DA Harvey Dent, bang, do that. But also, maybe if you want to add a few more minutes in there, on top of what Colin had in the first movie with his Penguin, just for the sake of building that friendship with Bruce Wayne. But again, as I always say, what way is Matt Reeves going to go? What a responsibility and pressure he has to really choose who he wants to see. So this one's from Zaman, Milk. So, hey Boba, love the videos and appreciate you keeping the Batman hype alive. Thank you. And I honestly can't wait to all of you guys who are watching these videos, you know, keeping in with the discussion series videos to still be here, like when we finally get the proper substantial, you know, floating around casting rumors. Zayman says, do you feel like a good progression for the trilogy would be to test Batman in various ways, such as mentally, physically, emotionally, or would you break it down another way? Once again, thanks for the vids, my man. Thank you for watching. So, I think I've echoed this in somewhat of various different ways. I don't know if I've looked at it as kind of categorically as like, you know, mentally, physically, and emotionally. I think it's always going to be a blend of all of those. But with the overall scope of across all movies, as Robert Pattinson said, you know, this is, I believe, even before the movie came out, he said he has a psychological roadmap for his Bruce Wayne / Batman for at least a couple more movies, you know, which is, you know, again, more solidifying the idea of it being a trilogy rather than 6. Trust me, would love 6 myself, but let's just always keep assuming it's just going to be 2 more movies. So I do feel like it's always going to be a psychological roadmap, but under psychology can come subcategories, of course. So in a second movie, it's still psychological development, like in the first movie with that of going from vengeance to hope, having the effect with hope, but psychological stuff of the second movie being all kinds of other things. Yeah, maybe it could be a physical challenge that pushes him psychologically to endure. As Matt Reeves says, Batman's superpower, even though he isn't a superhero, is his ability to endure. And that is one thing that always intrigues me about this psychological roadmap, that sure, like, that's probably simply meant as where we're going to see Bruce Wayne progress. We can see him from being a recluse, you know, as Falcone says, there's only one other guy more reclusive than me, you know, the Prince of the City, Bruce Wayne, to the third movie, quite a contrast. You know, he's out there being a bit more philanthropic style Bruce. That's one way of seeing a psychological roadmap of development from the first, second, and then third movie. But I do agree, emotional for sure. I feel like this is why I say a combination will always be in flux, because in the first movie I feel like we had a physical challenge, I feel like we had a mental challenge and an emotional one when you bring Selina into it. His father, you know, thinking his father, he'd been fighting for him for all these years, Alfred, he was defending his honor basically, but then to learn that it might not have been that way, even though Falcone was basically lying about that and Alfred kind of, you know, made it good again. But regardless, how can that really be capitalized? I think just double whammy it again, but maybe leaning on a subcategory some more. So often, as I say with Mr. Freeze, there can still be detective stories like that of the first movie of the Riddler. The Riddler was a killer, we didn't know who he was, who done it kind of thing, letters to the Batman, very detective, never really hands-on with Riddler, only as goons at the end. How about for the second movie, we're still wondering about, okay, what's causing this freeze, ice stuff all over the location. Batman, you know, goes along with Jim, but maybe there's an encounter or two in, like, I don't know, each quarter of the movie, and then a final boss battle. So there is a physical challenge, but also actual entertaining fights along the way, or Batman trying to get or do something or foil something that Mr. Freeze is doing to kind of distract Batman so he gets away, to the point of where if Batman doesn't stop wherever he's about to do it, could freeze, like, I don't know, 30 people somehow in the room below. I don't know, but I feel like we need, not that I required this in the first movie at all, but I feel like we need periodically in the next movie, if, only if, the next villain is one who can go hand to hand with Batman a bit more of a physical Batman pressurizing situation where he has to think fast, just like how Superman might come into a situation. How do I actually solve this with my powers right here, right now? Because if I don't, the submarine is about to, like, collapse. Or something like that, or this, you know, nuclear station is about to explode. What do I do? I would love to see Batman in situations like that, the pressure of using his insane world's greatest detective level intellect to solve certain situations. But I don't think, you know, to stop going on, I don't think I break it down another way. I do agree that the progression, and a good progression, would always be just capitalizing on becoming Batman more and more and more. Batman is already Batman in year 2 when we see in the movie. He's very Batman, but there's always that room to grow, and he will be Batman in the second and still as relevant of a Batman in the third movie, but it's always about kind of revising, you know? With studying for a test, you get better. You're still a student. This sounds such a weird analogy. Same with the Batman. He's still Batman, but with revising, he will always perfect himself. So I think those are the core pillar blocks. Yeah, the mental progression, the physical one, that's only, you know, a natural progression with Batman. Some people like to complain, oh, he's not big enough or stuff like that. I think that's just kind of BS, but like, he will always his body will always be ever progressing, I think. Not that I think we should expect a massive 50 pounds of muscle to be added on to Pattinson, by the way, for the second movie. And then, of course, emotionally will always be a recurring thing. For Batman, this is very emotional. That is at his core. Selina's thrown in the mix. Alfred, the compassion I think he will have for certain villains, maybe. I think you more or less summed it up, but all I did is just kind of just dive into your question even more, because ultimately I agree. I wouldn't really break it down another way other than choosing a core driving factor out of those 3 favored more over the other ones. I believe whatever the main villain is will always be the driving factor for whatever subcategory of psychological progression it is. With the Riddler, you know, there's a lot to that. For example, you know, they're both orphans. They're, you know, oh, vengeance is actually influencing, like that guy at the end. I'm vengeance. Batman looked at him just like, realizing maybe he's not so different from the Riddler. Like, what's that gonna be with? I feel like the villain will always be kind of a bit of a mirror to Batman in each movie. Not saying he's as bad as the Riddler, not saying he's as bad as Mr. Freeze with what he's doing, but he will always maybe be able to identify, and that will always be a driving home full circle factor for the movie's message with the Batman in said respective movie at said time. So enough said. NY says, even if they don't actually show him, it would be cool to see a news headline about a half-man, half-croc sighting in the sewers, especially since Gotham is flooded now. And that's got 90 upvotes, which is why I wanted to screenshot this one for this video. So Killer Croc, you know, we always talk about villains here adapting. As Matt Reeves says, I think, you know, while our movies are quite faithful to the comics, they're not as, you know, fantastical, albeit that it doesn't rule out some aspects of fantastical. And in the last discussion series video, we got into my analogy of Fantastical quite a bit, I believe, in terms of how he can do it, but might not do it as much as you may think in certain scenarios. I likened it to that of my comparison and analogy with the Planet of the Apes trilogy, with how that was grounded in our universe. Matt Reeves, you know, did those movies, but at the same time, there's not a drug that exists that is gonna evolve an ape that will take over our world. So that's the fantastical side, right? So with certain villains, yeah, of course, Killer Croc, especially in the very early versions, was just a man from birth with maybe, I guess you could liken it to that of a congenital disease that Matt Reeves has said that the Joker has suffered with since literal birth, and it gave him this reptilian skin. So you could say that. It's just, however, I mean, I'm not saying you're saying this. I would need a very in-detailed thing to kind of believe this in certain ways of how it can be adapted. Because, you know, I don't think just because Gotham's flooded now that all of a sudden a man just pops up and, hey, I'm Killer Croc. Hey, just because it's flooded now, I'm swimming around. Unless you could say that this reptilian guy, again, it would be very grounded in Matt Reeves' version. So again, it would be like Joker in terms of how he's got a congenital disease that's disfiguring him in that way. So I guess Killer Croc, maybe since birth, has had that. So I guess with Gotham flooded, you could say that maybe that's inspired him to go out on the prowl a little bit more. But I also screenshotted another comment, and this is kind of interesting because I always like to play devil's advocate, you know, whether that's supporting the more fantastical side of things, but also doubting it. Eric Vasquez says, I love all the possibilities for future villains in these films, but I'm honestly not sure characters like Killer Croc or Clayface would necessarily work in this very grounded world that Matt Reeves has created. I could definitely see more human characters like Two Face, Hugo Strange, and even Scarecrow fitting into the series though. And that's where I do tend to lean, as disappointing as that may be to people, albeit that I most certainly, despite having said that, do not rule fantastical villains out, because I do believe Matt Reeves can most certainly ground Ivy in a very grounded way. Again, I've demonstrated this, but I will lean into it in a separate video with how, again, it won't be hand going out, vine bursting through the floor in a metahuman power way. That just really won't happen. I can almost guarantee it. I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, but maybe some kind of chemical agent that really accelerates plant growth. That would be your fantastical side, akin to the Planet of the Apes trilogy, grounding that in our world, yet unrealistic drug that evolved apes to take over the world. So again, unrealistic drug maybe to accelerate plant growth, that kind of situation, right? Clayface, I kind of disagree with Eric here because the Golden Age Clayface, but maybe he meant the more modernized, you know, Mudman type, morphing Mudman situation, just wore a clay mask and he was a killer. And I also think that he would use the unrealistic prosthetics. So like prosthetics that are unmatched even to the amazing prosthetics we have in today's real world. But the only issue I have with Clayface, even though I 110% think he can work, is that that would feel like Riddler was killing people. Granted, there was a bigger motive behind all of that. This is something I keep asking. I can't wait to dissect this when we get more information officially about the film. But are we really going to have a murder mystery again? Or why is this person murdering these people? I don't necessarily think so. I go back to the comment with 90 upvotes. Clearly, a lot of people want more of these fantastical villains. Yes, Killer Croc can be done. Just like Clayface could with my examples, because you could do a guy with the reptilian kind of genetic mutation from birth or congenital disease. But I just don't know if that villain would be the core focus when Reeves could go for more of a villain where, even though what I just said, reptilian skin because of congenital disease is realistic, like, and could easily be done in one of these movies, I just feel like why wouldn't he go for Scarecrow? Or why wouldn't he go for Mr. Freeze and Batman being compassionate but also can't, you know, I need to stop you, Mr. Freeze, because what you're doing is causing all these issues. Like, those ones seem to be more of slam dunks than just making it prominent in the forefront and center like Riddler was, or Mr. Freeze could be as the second villain, Killer Croc. Like, I just don't know. I'm not saying a Killer Croc story can't be good, but I can imagine maybe when the movie picks up, Batman in the time since the flooding at the end of the first movie, or maybe this is an Easter egg in the Penguin series, masked vigilante Batman who saved hundreds on the rooftop, blah blah blah, stops Crocodile Man or something like that. That would be really cool, because that would be a cool newspaper Gotham Gazette reporting that there was some, you know, reptilian skinned man who was terrorizing a certain part of Gotham that the Batman puts away. We don't really see Batman all too much, if at all, in the Penguin series, but it's referred to that some guy was obviously having a good time since Gotham was flooded anyway in between the Batman 1 and 2 in the Penguin series. I can imagine it more like that, but to center a whole story on Killer Croc, yes, it can be done. We can get into how or what made Killer Croc the way he was. You know, was it a similar story to, you know, Joker with Matt Reeves' commentary of how he's been looked at as a monster his whole life. So as a result, he's kind of developed this nihilistic view of the world, and it allowed him, because people were afraid to look at him, to get inside people's head. He had that opportunity. They feel uncomfortable looking at him. So he can kind of like take that opportunity to look at them and stare at them back with not really much shame. At some point, you go from embarrassment and insecurity to like, okay, you're scared of me. I'm going to get in your head. Could they do a similar thing with Killer Croc? But again, over all the other Rogues Gallery members, I just don't think it would be as likely. And secondly, just because there was a flooding, I don't think that will make him like a second movie's main villain, albeit I could expect an Easter egg of Batman reporting, as I said, either in the Penguin series or even mentioned at the beginning of the second movie. You can imagine Bruce's monologue again. You know, I've been doing this, how Batman has actually already tackled one of them. And of course, that guy will go up against Batman again and again in the decades in the future, but he's already put away Killer Croc during the flooding time. That is more of what I expect for a character such as Killer Croc. Alright, so next up from Marco. Hey Boba, I've been following for quite some time now, and I love your enthusiasm about a variety of topics. Thanks for watching, Marco. Really appreciate that. I'm glad you're enjoying them. And thanks for sending in this question. I was wondering if you have any suggestions or ideas for what kind of song they may choose to be a part of Batman 2 in the vein of Something in the Way. Maybe some more Nirvana, grunge, or anything. Hashtag open your eyes. I get asked this a lot. And some people, and I fully agree with kind of both sides here. Some people are like, Matt Reeves won't use Nirvana again, you know, that's kind of unlikely. There's no basis for that claim other than just vibing, like, you got to use the same artist in the second movie, and you kind of have this, like, I doubt it, you know, there's going to be another artist more likely. And you kind of get that instinctual, like, no, yeah, I can see that, you know, my intuition's telling me another artist. But then again, I argue he could use Nirvana again. Like, literally. That's the difficult thing. So I could easily see him choosing another artist that Bruce would listen to. Because don't forget, it's literally canon that Bruce Wayne, Rob Pattinson's Bruce Wayne, was listening to Nirvana. Like, Kurt Cobain exists in the Batman universe because Bruce literally turned it down in the Batcave. He was listening to Something in the Way in the Batcave when Alfred comes down. And clearly, Bruce likes grunge, he likes Nirvana, there's amps all over, like literal multiple amps, there's guitars. What I'm saying is, like, he could choose another Nirvana artist. Now, I don't know, like, I'm really kind of 50-50 there, because maybe Matt Reeves just wouldn't want to use another Nirvana song out of, hey, like, you know, in the second movie, hey, here's another Nirvana song. Not that I would complain about that, because Nirvana's one of my favorite bands in the whole world, but the reason is, you know, you could just have another artist with another song that really affects the mood of the movie. And it really depends, I guess, what Matt Reeves is listening to at the time. Because Matt Reeves, as he said, he was listening to Something in the Way, and that really resonated with him. Also, Kurt Cobain, and the kind of grungy aspect, was a very creative, artistic impression on the film in multiple ways, literally. Long story short, I can imagine another Nirvana song. Now, there's another song, when I was live streaming a while back, I was like, what other Nirvana song would they use? Like, because you're not going to play Lithium, you're not going to play Teen Spirit, you're not going to play Breed or Drain You. It's just not going to happen. Even though I can imagine songs like 20 Nirvana fans out there, like Milk It, would be an amazing song to a fight scene. But that's not going to happen with that, because there's only traditionally, as with what the precedent has been set so far, one song that's going to set the movie up and maybe finish with the end. But again, they might not copy and paste that kind of same vibe they did there with playing at the beginning and at the end. But I was really thinking, you know, Polly, I don't know if Polly would work, because the lyrics are a bit kind of, you know, dark, and I don't think it would reflect what's going on in this movie, or any movie, to be honest. You need something, like Something in the Way worked both in tone and in lyrics. It really does. Like, you can liken those lyrics, and somebody did a breakdown a while ago, you know, underneath the bridge, Tarp has sprung a leak, the animals I've trapped have all become my pets. Like, you know, the animals I've trapped being like the Rogues Gallery, or they're the villains, they've all become my pets. What other song is there? And I totally forgot about Come As You Are, As You Were, As I Want You to Be. There is, you know, that would be really good. And there's so many TV shows and movies that open up, or like most recently I watched the last episode of For All Mankind. And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but as the final shot is going over what it's going over, it starts with that down, 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 down. So that would be perfect. I am not going to lie, I'm a very biased Nirvana fan, but considering that Bruce has grown a little bit, that, you know, we don't need to go as somber as Something in the Way, you know, like underneath the bridge. We don't necessarily need to do that. And Come As You Are isn't an upbeat song, but it's got more of that neutrality to it. And I feel like Bruce has gone from somber to, he's still Batman, so he's still a somber guy, but what I mean is to, like, you know, a bit more neutral now. And he's only on the upwards trajectory to becoming even more hopeful, even more of a better Batman. So to reflect that of a song choice with a bit more of a, you know, going from somber, Something in the Way, to Come As You Are by Nirvana, to open up that movie, even with a similar bike scene, or to whatever Batman's doing. Maybe it just picks up with him using the grapple hook and he's busting some criminals, but it's like, and I don't mind if they edit it, by the way, because my God, if there's one thing that's been demonstrated, and that's also as demonstrated with Something in the Way in the DC Fandom trailer with the Batman piano, down, 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 and how that fit in with the Something in the Way. Come As You Are could be edited in whatever way you want. Some people are insanely good at editing songs while still maintaining the integrity of the original song's vibe. So once again, I know I've been rambling about this for a while, but I think it's because I'm really passionate about the song choice of the second movie. Could be any other artist, but for the sake of it, let's just say Nirvana, because they've done Nirvana before. I think Come As You Are would be perfect. They could fit that and edit that into so many different ways. They could slightly edit it to have a little bit of a different vibe. Come As You Are would work perfect with the trailer, whatever kind of DC fandom trailer you want to envision there. And again, guys, with the lyrics, think about Something in the Way. It, you know, even the actual song title, the chorus, Something in the Way. There was something in the way. You know, 2 years of nights have turned me into a nocturnal animal, but like crime has doubled, blah, blah, blah. Like Batman didn't feel like he was having effects. Something was in the way. Now, Come As You Are. as you were, as I want you to be, as a friend, as an old enemy. Like, these lyrics could be translated and spewed over 1,000 different things with Batman. I feel like that would be the most appropriate song for Matt Reeves to use, but then again, might not be Nirvana, could be a whole different artist, could be another artist that they demonstrate Bruce listening to, maybe in a similar grungy kind of area. Who knows who they might choose? Someone like Radiohead, Creep, you know, but I feel like it might be a bit too dark. That's why I do feel like Come As You Are, that kind of tone, once again to repeat myself, from the kind of depressing, kind of somber-y Something in the Way, and how that really fit the mood of the beginning of the first movie, to Batman's risen a bit more, but he's still Batman. So now we're at that mid-level, Come As You Are, and listen to it, by the way. I recommend the MTV Unplugged version. Don't get me wrong, the record version of Come As You Are, amazing. It's got a bit more of a, recorded version, the drums and everything, but MTV's Unplugged, Come As You Are, pause this video right now, open another tab, listen to it, and imagine that in the second Batman movie. And also listen to the MTV Unplugged, Something in the Way. Man, do I wish Nirvana did a few more acoustic live performances. That would have been amazing. Serenabir says, open your eyes. Another real one right there. Real ones will understand what I mean by what a real one is. Anyway, good video, Boba. Thank you for the previous video. What is the psychological lesson / turn you expect Reeves to demonstrate in the sequel? The first one shows a man driving his criminological experiment with vengeance and learning that it's hope that's a better driving force. The second one, in my opinion, can move from hope to cooperation with trust, thereby allowing this man to trust other members to help his crusade. Yeah, kind of like an expansion to what we were getting onto earlier with, the natural or good progression for Batman. With this one, yeah, I mean, that could be seen with what you said. Let's just focus on cooperation with trust. Yeah, Batman learning that he can have an effect not only for himself, but letting others have an effect, That's quite a turn for Batman to do, because Gotham, this city is eating itself. But now he needs to kind of trust other people like Mayor Bella Real, maybe even DA Harvey Dent, to also be able to help. But also, you could also see cooperation with trust, thereby allowing this man to trust other members to help his crusade. Robin, trusting another person to help him in his mission. But again, do not want to fuels too much of the Robin talk here, because I don't think that's appropriate for the second movie. Way too premature, if you ask me. We're still in the young Batman mode, even with time between the first and second movie, to all of a sudden have a kid there to be like, wait, no, I feel like that's... I don't know about that yet. Again, I wouldn't mind Robin being teased at the end of the second movie. I feel like a way to end the second movie off, tangenting right now, I know, but it's kind of relevant, is to tease the Flying Graysons. Alfred and Bruce maybe go there at the end of the second movie, and then it cuts with the rope cut and they fall, picking up the third movie. I'd be okay with that. But again, I just thought it was relevant to Robin, where you say allowing someone else to come in, Bat Family-wise. That is what the Bat Family is, allowing him to share his crusade, and Batman also learns a lot through having others in the fold. So, my expectation is kind of what I went over earlier with my ramble about the natural progression being like an amalgamation of multiple things. But, yeah, there was a clear one, as what you're demonstrating here. Vengeance to hope. That further and bringing out Bruce a bit more, because the only way to improve this city with those people isn't really by going to them as Batman. Granted, he can go to them as Batman, and just kind of have like a Jim and Batman moment on a rooftop just with the DA, and like they did in The Dark Knight with Jim and the DA, Harvey Dent, and maybe Bella Real, especially as they kind of trust him a bit more now. I mean, for crying out loud, he helped them out of the flood, but more effective ways to go there as Bruce Wayne. I mean, for crying out loud as well. Mayor Bella Real, who was a candidate at the time, saying, I don't think you're doing enough to help this city. That was the most clear seed to pick that up again one day, and that is through... Anyway, yeah, I never did get back to Bella Real because, the DA came bursting through with a car. But hey, now that I'm having a bit more of an effect, now I see hope. Maybe I can, put the trench coat back on, go out there, resume that appointment with Bella Real now, who went from candidate asking that of me to now she's mayor. Let's have another meeting and see what I can do. That would be great. So yeah, maybe cooperation with trust. You may have hit the nail on the head. I don't know if that would be the psychological lesson, like inherently. I can't really picture it right now fully, but that will most certainly be one of the pillars. But anyway, that's a good point. I want everyone to think about that one and also offer their deliberations and ideas down in the comments below as to what you think one of the driving forces could be. Is it cooperation with trust, you know, thereby allowing this man to trust other members to help his crusade? Or do you think it's that and maybe something else is the primary one? So KB says, hey Boba, do you think we could get a modern version of the classic blue and grey suit down the line? I saw some concept art that looks like that was the idea for the first film. And yeah, that's probably what you saw in this. There was a little bit of a lighting that, or maybe it was the fabric itself, that made it seem as though they were going to do a hue of that. Now, I spoke about this in a live stream last night, and it came down to a couple of things. I can't imagine them, especially with how incredible suit designers are these days. Like, these people are incredible. The ones who make the really good ones. The people who even made the Batman suit, it's definitely a feat. Like, how practical it is. You know, I've seen it up close in person. It does have a very heavy gray theme there. Even the breastplate armor isn't like an actual plate, you know, kind of like a sheeny plate. It's, you know, when you look up to it, it's got like whispers of like hair on it. It's kind of fabricy, but like underneath it would obviously have like a plating. It is very great. However, could they incorporate, as the suit does develop over time, maybe a bit of a blue hue? Very subtle. That's the only way I could ever imagine them doing it. Like, it's never going to be like direct blue and gray. It's just not going to be straight up that. Like, that's just... It wouldn't translate as well. It's like, why are you wearing such an obvious blue when you're meant to be blending in and things like that? However, I can imagine the artists and the people behind creating the suit, maybe when the light reflects off of the cape, it's done in such a way where the almost technology of the fabric, if you will, brings out a bit of a blue hue, almost like as if like the blue moonlight in an anime might do that to like a certain shot of fabric. But then again, I just feel like Matt Reeves and Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, and everything like that will probably opt to keep the armor color palette the way it is. Maybe it might change a little bit, but to achieve that blue kind of look, it would probably just be lighting. I don't know if they would actually incorporate it into the suit or the cape itself. I can't imagine the cowl having an actual very subtle blue to it when the light shines on it, other than if there's literal blue light in that of a light bulb in the Iceberg Lounge coming down on him, and it's like, oh my god, that actually looks like the blue-gray Batman. As for the fabric itself, I just don't know. I do feel like it'll be more of a lighting choice. And this is probably what you're referring to. So if you see this, you can see that the Batman suit here has a little bit of a blue. I don't know if my camera's focusing properly. There we go. A bit of a reflection there of the light, but you can see... But I don't know if that's the material itself or rather the lighting. And that's what I mean. Imagine if this isn't actually the cowl being blue, but more of like the lighting that Batman is standing in happens to have a little bit of a blue reflection. That's how I can imagine him doing it. But then again, you could argue, just to repeat myself once more, that what we're looking at here, they could adapt it in that way where the fabric itself in certain lights will have more of a leather kind of black look, but in other moments, the actual way the fabric works, almost in like those trippy materials that sometimes dresses have. Is it that color or that color? It also gives off the impression of blue at times as well. But I never, ever will think it would be too transparently like contrasting, like blue and then gray. Because as cool as that is in animations and stuff, if you're making the decision to adapt that onto screen and whatnot, I think it's just too kind of, that doesn't make as much sense. If Batman's going to do this, he wouldn't go out straight up in this color. If in a grounded perspective, what makes more sense is the color palette that he's already rocking in the first movie. But I would love your thoughts on this. Would you like it, or do you think they're probably not going to do it and it would be more of a lighting choice in the second movie? Like, for example, there was a lot of red in the Batman, the logo and everything. There was a lot of red. That was a theme. If one of the movies is blue, you can bet your ass there's going to be many lighting shots that will make Batman's armor and his, you know, cowl, cape and everything come out the way you probably want, albeit with the actual armor itself not even having those colors in it. Okay, so lastly, I want to leave this video off on, this isn't so much a question, but something that I want everyone to kind of carry with them when maybe replying down in the comments or carrying with them in their thoughts when thinking specifically, instead of just be like, oh, I want Man-Bat as the second villain, without really even thinking about how that would work. Because I get being carried away, this is what I always say, but like really think about, do you think that will be done? Do you think Matt Reeves, with everything we know, would do said villain? that's what I think is really important with what Connor Woog is pointing out here, especially with choices behind that of what choices were made when casting and thinking of what characters should be in the first movie. So Connor Woog says, when we are speculating about who the next main villain is, I think we should look at how Riddler was chosen for the Batman. To me, Riddler was chosen because of their goal for a detective Batman movie and how he would work well with Batman at this point in his arc. With this being said, what will the goal be for the second movie? Which villain could be the right fit for where Bruce is at in the Batman 2? I think Reeves will choose based on that versus just asking what villain should we do. I 100% agree. Sometimes, well, not even sometimes, when making the choice for the villain in the second movie, it's not just like, oh, well, yeah, I want to do Killer Croc. You know, Reeves will actually probably think, okay, I've got all these characters to play with. As I said, it's a big burden he's got. It's a fun one, but also a very high pressurizing one because it's like, I want to do this one, this one, this one, this one. But like, actually, which one? How do I pick? But then it's also inspired and influenced with what Connor Woog has articulated so well here. Riddler worked with what point of Bruce's arc and Batman's arc he's at in with his life in general, right? It served him. It developed him, psychological, and both Batman. It was transformative. What will be the choice behind the second villain? How will that influence Batman's arc? How will that further him? How will that complement him? How will that help him deal with certain things in certain situations in the second movie? Then he will probably think, okay, with the themes and the development I want Bruce to go on in that second movie, who are the best candidates for that out of the Rogues Gallery villains? You know, if I want Batman to maybe be a bit more empathetic and compassionate to his villains, and maybe even try and help them and not want to defeat them in a certain way, maybe that's when he'll look at, okay, Rogues Gallery villains, Mr. Freeze would be a good Heart of Ice-esque story to tell there. Something who Bruce can kind of see a double-sided aspect to. You see what I mean? So based on what Connor Woog is saying, with this being said, what will the goal be for the second movie? Which villain could be the right fit for where Bruce is at in the Batman 2? I think Reeves would choose based on that. Who do you want to see think? Instead of just being, as I said, like, oh, you know, Mr. Freeze. Really think about what thought process you think Matt Reeves could be getting into. Where you think realistically if you were in charge of this character, where do I think Bruce could go next and what could complement that? Maybe it's Harvey Dent for you, because that could be logical, you know? Maybe Bruce is doing this in the second movie, he's developing in this way, and there's a tragedy with Harvey. But again, I think that'd be a bit premature. I would like to see Harvey in the second movie and then saved for that downfall in the third movie. So without tangenting too much, let me know your responses to that as the final kind of send-off for this week's video. So guys, that ends another episode to the Batman discussion series, or the Batman 2 discussion series now. Would love your thoughts on everything as always. Next video, if not up next week, will be the week after. So, you know, let me know any further questions, bouncing off the questions we have in this video for the next video. Leave them down in the comments. I will screenshot them. Any brand new ideas you have, obviously, ask those questions as well. And we'll talk about those in the next installment. As for proving if you got this far, just because I love to see the people who got this far, I am aware that some people could skip, but if you're skipping and leaving that in your comment, I hope you feel bad, and I hope you feel fake, because you didn't make it this far, you just skipped this far. But to those who did get this far and watch the whole video, leave with whatever comment you're going to put down in the comments below. The city streets are crowded for the holiday. So, crowded for the holiday will be it. Hashtag crowded for the holiday. But that's enough from me. Like the video. Would really appreciate that. Likes help get this out there a little bit more. Subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, do subscribe, because there's going to be more news updates. HBO spin-off, Arkham Series, Penguin, whatever, news, castings, all this good stuff. Also, all the other videos. Watch my Kenobi video. But yeah, I'm going to shut up now. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.